All right, so today we're diving into a really different and honestly pretty provocative take on the recent youth protests in Nepal. This is not your standard news report, not by a long shot. The source we're looking at frames this whole thing in a way you've probably never heard before. So let's get right into it.
So, the analysis we're breaking down kicks off with this killer question, and it just perfectly sets this sarcastic, super modern tone. It's asking us, right from the get-go, to see these events not just politically, but through a cultural, almost a social media kind of lens.
And this perspective starts by framing the whole event like it's a new season of a show you'd binge on Netflix. It's calling the protest a chaotic, Gen Z remix of what we might traditionally think of as a revolution. The argument boils the whole conflict down to its simplest and maybe most cynical form. You've got the protesters on one side with a super straightforward demand. Hey, maybe do less stealing and more work. And on the other side, this viewpoint imagines this darkly funny response from the government, basically saying, this isn't corruption, it's just a family tradition.
And the chaos that apparently followed was, well, a pretty surreal picture. We're talking police who weren't just controlling crowds, they were supposedly playing PUBG in real life. A protest against corruption somehow ends with a guy looting a computer monitor like he's at a Black Friday sale. It gets wilder. The analysis even jokes about picking a new prime minister on a Discord server. And get this, influencers making reels with the burning parliament as their background? A full-on Gen Z revolution, right?
Okay, so let's move on and see how this all connects. To really get the why behind all this chaos, the analysis uses this central metaphor. Nepal's democracy isn't some finished product. Nope, it's more like a brand new, kind of buggy piece of software that's still in its trial version.
In this timeline, it really puts it all into perspective. The monarchy only ended back in 2006, and the republic was declared in 2008. I mean, historically speaking, that was just yesterday. This democracy is incredibly young, which really hammers home that whole trial version idea. It's a system that's still being tested and updated in real time.
So what does this analysis really mean by a buggy app? Well, the whole idea is that a new democracy is like a new app on your phone. You kind of expect it to have some flaws, right? It's going to need updates, bug fixes, it might even crash, and you'll have to restart it. And of course, it's probably going to come with some annoying pop-up ads, which in this metaphor are things like corruption and inefficiency. And this brings us to the real core of the argument. The analysis draws this sharp contrast between how a new democracy like Nepal supposedly handles protests versus how a more mature democracy might do it. It's what's being called the rookie mistake versus the pro-level jugaad. You know, that clever, resourceful fix. So here's the comparison this analysis makes. On one side, you have the rookie mistake. A new democracy, like Nepal's in this example, goes into full-on panic mode. It bans social media, which just makes the whole issue bigger. But on the other hand, you have the pro-jugaad approach. The strategy there isn't to block anything, it's to distract. You create new, totally unrelated debates to get everyone talking about something else, and you wear down the original protests until people just forget. And here's how that pretty cynical strategy is supposed to work step by step. First, you just let people protest. Let them get loud, but when the noise gets a little too high for comfort, you launch a completely new controversy. It could be anything, a movie ban, a weird court case, you name it. The point is to get everyone busy debating the distraction, and eventually, the original protest just runs out of steam and fizzles out. And this punchy little quote just sums up that entire worldview perfectly. The goal isn't to solve the actual problem, it's just to manage the outrage. Distraction unlocked, democracy saved. Okay, so this brings us to the final section, and to the source's most challenging, most provocative moral of the story. This is where the analysis really pushes into some uncomfortable territory when it comes to democracy and corruption. This is probably the question that popped into your head, right? I mean, after all this cynical analysis, is the argument actually that we should all just be okay with corruption? Well, it's a little more complicated than a simple yes or no.
This perspective then throws out a really controversial economic argument. It puts forward this idea that from a purely cynical economic view, as long as that dirty money is being spent and circulating inside the country, it's still technically contributing to GDP growth. It's a shocking thought, I know, but it's a key part of this worldview.
But, and this is a huge but, there's a critical catch to that cynical logic. The real problem, this analysis argues, isn't just the corruption itself. It's where the money goes. The major issue is when that wealth is siphoned off to a Swiss bank account instead of being spent in the local economy, where it could,
at least in theory, benefits someone else.
So, what's the ultimate moral of the story according to this viewpoint? It's that democracy is messy. It doesn't just mature overnight. Power is often going to be misused before it's used correctly. It's a long, bumpy road of trial and error. So from this cynical perspective, Nepal isn't really failing, it's just going through a chaotic phase of its development, and its government simply overreacted.
And that's the final, provocative question this whole analysis leaves us chewing on. Based on this framework of rookie mistakes versus pro-level distraction, did Nepal's government do what it had to do? Or was their panicked response a classic sign of a democracy that's still just trying to find its footing? Definitely something to think about. That's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in.